We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back with our special New Year's Liberty Nation panel of Tim Donner, Scott DeCosenza, and Jeff Charles. And it's time to break out the crystal balls and make some predictions on what the year ahead has in store for us. Gentlemen, I thought I might start this one off myself with a prediction that the president will demand Congress craft some legislation of some description to manage social media enterprises, specifically, obviously, with Twitter in mind. What do we think? Am I right, wrong, or somewhere in between?
That is definitely coming down the pike. I think you are 1,000% right about that. We saw over the past couple of years, Biden was really cracking down on social media companies, Twitter included, but also Facebook. He came out and said that they were killing people because they weren't censoring enough COVID-19 misinformation, quote unquote. So yeah, I do expect to see that happen.
Well, okay. Well, let's go straight back onto you then, Jeff. What do your tea leaves tell you for the year?
I am predicting a massive record level sales of popcorn as people watch what's happening with these Republican investigations into Biden and everything else. I think it's going to be the best example of political theater. I think episode after episode is going to be even more compelling than the House Select January 6th committee. I think that's going to be the big thing.
So you're saying they're going to actually take the format of the January 6th committee, which is, that wasn't a trial, it wasn't a committee, it was a showpiece. Oh, so they'll use the same. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, they may not be as good at putting on a show as Democrats, but they're going to put on a show because the content is going to be very compelling.
Well, Jeff, let's be clear that you have to remember that they didn't actually put on the show themselves. They hired an expert to produce that show.
Exactly.
That television producer they hired. And I actually don't know the answer to this. I'm sorry, I don't. But did they use public money to pay that person's salary? It's a good question, I think.
Probably.
That is a fantastic question.
The Republicans should do the same. And in fact, if he could stay out of the way, Donald Trump might be the best person. This man knows how to produce a compelling television series, So,
but you know what?
True enough.
Social media is something that was so reflexively left-wing for so long that it's like when Fox News came along, the left couldn't stand the idea that there was one outlet that was conservative. One.
Tim, we're still discovering how left-wing social media will be without their thumbs on the scale. It'll be an interesting experiment, right?
This is what I mean. The Twitter thing, you can't understate the significance of it. The way I see it, Mark, is when Elon Musk took it over, if he did anything short of keeping it the way that it was, including trashing the whole thing, the country would be better off, because we see what happened when Twitter censored stories in 2020. It may very well have affected the outcome. It may have changed the outcome. So getting rid of it altogether would even be better than going back to the way it was. And of course, I think the left is kind of confused about it now, because part of them, they rely on social media, but now they hate social media in the form of the leader of social media, Twitter. So they don't know what to do. If in doubt, regulate.
Now, let's go to Scott. What do you predict for 2023, the Supreme Court, politics? What's on your plate?
Well, I think that for me, the big news in 2023 will be that the Supreme Court holds that affirmative action in higher education is violative of all the laws that prohibit it, that are already on the books, which is to say that the civil rights acts that prohibit discrimination against somebody or for the discrimination on the basis of race is illegal. Right now, we have a situation where you can discriminate for somebody for preferred races, and that's not counted as against the other people that you're discriminating against, okay? But I think that's going to go away. And also, I think that beyond college admission and the universities will then reverberate out to the greater society. That's what sort of led the charge for other organizations to discriminate on the basis of race, and I think it will lead them to recede that as well. And I think that's a great movement in the country, to the extent that we can not think of people first as race or sex or any other immutable characteristic, the whole reason for these civil rights laws in the first place. I think that's a great thing, and I expect we'll see that change in 2023.
I do not suspect, however, that we will see it change in the federal government and the state governments, with specifically the state governments, with
This will be the
handing
start
out.
of it, Mark. It's got to start somewhere.
You think
and
it will
I think
impact these universal basic income schemes that are being trotted out? I'm specifically talking on the left coast here.
Well, you have to look at where we are now and how we got there. It's a long road, okay? Bakke was 1973, which was the Supreme Court case that allowed racial discrimination in higher education. And now where we are with, the wokeism and the whatever. So could it be 50 years from a decision that reverses it? Maybe. I hope it's not that long, but these things are oil tankers. They don't turn on a dime, right? So
absolutely.
But I'm looking forward to them giving the full stop order in 2023.
Absolutely. Well, it might turn out to be an evergreen and get stuck in the Suez Canal. Tim, you can either scatter the chicken bones or use your analytic mind. What do you reckon?
I usually use my analytic mind to consider the chicken bones that are left on the plate, but be that as it may. 2023, I have sort of a 1 and 1A. Prediction 1, and we had an exclusive to this effect just last week at LibertyNation.com, that Ron DeSantis will run for president. There had been questions not about whether he will eventually run, but whether he would choose to do it in 2024 with Trump in the race. And I think he's determined that he cannot let his moment, and this is Ron DeSantis's moment after his overwhelming victory in Florida and his growing numbers among Republicans across the nation. He's not going to let Trump stand in his way, even though he knows Trump will likely devastate him, verbally at least, and try to take him down. He's already threatened to reveal information that only he has, he claims, on DeSantis. He's called him to sanctimonious, et cetera, et cetera. But here's 1A in the prediction, and I'm not quite going to make this a prediction. I might put it as high as 50-50 because it makes sense if you follow it through. The ultimate Republican nightmare that Donald Trump decides to run as a third-party candidate as revenge against the Republican Party, which is increasingly unlikely to choose him as their nominee. Mike Pompeo, we have it from good sources that Mike Pompeo is going to get in January. DeSantis is going to get in. Trump looks like he's not going to be able to get the nomination, at least not a glide path. The question is, what does he do if he doesn't? And the third party scenario for him makes sense. He isn't subject to the rules and regulations of the Republican Party. He's free to be the wild card that he really always has been. And if he plucks off 20% of the vote, Joe Biden is a lock for a second term.
I predict that if he does that, he'll be buried under the prison because there's enough people with enough power that want to go after Trump that if all the Republicans that are still left after he moves away from the party turn their back on him, he's going to have some existential problems in America.
Oh, yes, he may get
some of those Republicans might actually join in on the effort to make sure he serves time.
I think
maybe Ron DeSantis decides whether or not the games he played with the zoning board in Palm Beach to get that Mar-a-Lago, that shuffle he did with, whether it was a residence or not.
I don't know what's going on
that can be pulled against
with these people. Mike Lindell, who is the most pro-Trump person in the entire country, the My Pillow guy, he just came out last week and said he questions DeSantis's victory in Florida by 19 points. He questions the Dade County vote. He is a Trump loyalist. So you see that Trump is starting to emit stuff about other candidates.
I
that
did
have
I did a year-end roundup on Liberty Nation the other day, the state of political play based on betting odds and poll numbers. And obviously you have Joe Biden underwater by more than by 9 points. Kamala Harris underwater by 15. Donald Trump underwater by 19.6%.
Right.
Ron DeSantis plus 5.2 nationally. He's the only major national figure with a net positive approval. That does give you some hints as towards the direction of the country.
The real money bettors have said DeSantis is their favorite.
Yes,
actually putting their
DeSantis
own money
is-
at risk.
Right.
DeSantis is now favored by the cash money bettors to both secure the GOP nomination
And you can
to
only
beat
expect
Joe
that
Biden.
trend to accelerate
Mm.
as the year goes along, I think. And DeSantis, if he picks his spot, to me, likely goes in the spring or early summer. By that time, you will be able to see how the Trump candidacy is playing after about 6 months.
All right, gents, we will check back in on these predictions as the year moves on. Now, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back talking political New Year's resolutions with our special New Year's Liberty panel. Don't touch that dial. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative Five. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's
Hi, I'm
Lisa
Lisa
K.
K.
Donner.
Donner.
Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh.
Heard it here first.
Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative Five.